I've always really loved flamenco. It's hard to explain why, but from when I was really young, I've always just reacted to that music very instinctively and very emotionally. And so, on one level, it was just a very primal love of the music for me. But then, as I grew up and was learning Indian music and playing Indian classical music, then listening to flamenco again with a bit more of a studied ear, then I was also mentally very fascinated because there are so many similarities between the two styles, even though they're completely different. Especially in the rhythm and the way we approach rhythm in details might be different, but the focus on rhythm is the same. And so there is such intricate rhythmic counterpoint and work in flamenco, and in Indian music, of course, the way we count, our counting system is so intricate. So I can really listen and appreciate in the flamenco style. And of course, there's something very passionate and transcendent in flamenco, which moves me in the same way that when you hear a classical singer or someone like my father play in Indian music, there's something very spiritual about it. And so I've always just kind of had Indian music, of course, but then also flamenco as two of my favorite styles of music. And so having this opportunity to really explore through my own music their similarities and differences was just something I really found fascinating. Honestly, this record couldn't have happened without Javier Limón. He was so integral to all of the music. For me, I don't know if I would have known where to begin if I wanted to make a flamenco record that's so huge. You know, who do I work with? How do I do it? And through working with a producer who was as wonderful as him, it really kind of focused the album, and together we were able to explore all of my musical desires. And he is so successful and popular in that tradition that he is friends and colleagues with all the amazing musicians. So for me, it opened up all those doors in a new country, and we worked together really, really well. I've had that experience a few times, not many times though, where you're able to meet someone and trust them enough and have enough of a chemistry to be able to write music together. I don't think that can happen very easily, but with Javier, it really worked. I could come to him with some ideas that were not flamenco, just my own melodies, my own ideas in a raga of Indian classical music, and he could hear them, and together we could put them into a flamenco rhythm, for example. But then also he could come to me and say, oh, there is this form like a seguria or a granaina, it goes like this, and then I could work with him. So we really worked very well together, and so all of the pieces on the album, I would say, are really a collaboration between both of us. Even if it was my composition, he did the complete arrangement. So he was really important. I really loved getting to work on this record. We recorded with so many guest artists. We did the recordings in California, in London, in Madrid, in Sevilla, in many cities in India. And that's something I love about modern recording, because it just opens up so many options that couldn't have been possible before. And so we were able to start a song in Spain, send it to someone in India for me to record my part in London. And again, Javier was so great at being able to get the recording qualities to work together so well and to make that possible. For me, it was really good that we were working that way, because sometimes I love to travel and do everything myself and be involved in every little detail. But this time I had to focus, and I had to work from one place a bit more and only go to Spain and then be at home in London because I was expecting my first child. So we started the record, I think, when I was about 4 months pregnant, and then we finished the mastering, I think, just a few weeks after my son was born. So it was a different way of working for me. But I think that was, it was really good. It was really good because sometimes I can take too long and I can get too focused in too many details. And this time I really was just being very creative and focusing on the music, and having those limitations actually really freed me. I'm really happy with the recording. That's a difficult question because it's hard for me to say I'm happy with a recording. I always want to keep working on something, and you always want to fix something, change something. And at some point one has to stop and say, this is finished, and then share it with other people. And I always find that difficult. But within that, I think where this record is, I think it's a really interesting exploration of these musical styles. And it's a really good picture of where I am as a musician today. And I think sometimes if I think of albums as photographs more than as some big ultimate thing, then that's good, because I think it's a part of my journey, and I hope to keep growing from here as well and keep doing more. But where I am right now, I'm really, really proud of this record. So I hope people like it. I didn't think about the name of the album very hard. It just came to me one day very impulsively, and it felt right. Because, of course, the word traveller has many associations and connotations when one thinks of gypsies, nomads, travelling peoples. And so in that sense, it was a perfect name for an album that's exploring the music of the gypsies, whether from India, from Spain, or anywhere in between. But also the word really applies to me and my life, because I've led quite a nomadic life since I was a child, on tour with my father, and then being a touring musician myself since I was 13. I've lived in 3 continents. So I've always felt like someone that's kind of moving around the world and just getting to explore. And so there's a light-hearted feeling to that. And it's something I think I've been very fortunate to be able to do. So a traveller just kind of applies to me, and it applies to the music, and it's just perfect. Of course, on one side, there are incredible musicians from Spain on the record, but I was so pleased to get the musicians from India that we did. Some of them are long-time collaborators of mine. There's a tabla player, Tanmoy Bose, who is my favorite tabla player to play with. He's played with my father for many years. I've performed with him since I was 16. We're very close, and he's played throughout the record and lent a lot of magic to the pieces. Another percussionist who plays in the South Indian tradition called Prasanna Devaraja has played throughout the record. And for example, on a song like Traveller, he's done a solo on the Morsing, which is the Indian version of a Jew's harp. And throughout the record, like moments like that, he just has given really fantastic flavors and textures to the album. I felt so pleased to work with Shubha Mudgal. She's one of India's greatest singers, and she has a very strong, very kind of lower tonality voice, which I thought of immediately on this record because it matched that flamenco feeling for me a lot. And she is the solo singer on Krishna. And so I felt very lucky to get her on the record. Sanjeev Shankar plays Shanai, which is a reed wind instrument from India. And he's a student of my father's, and so I've played with him over the years. And I thought of him on Traveller right away. I just knew that it needed a solo by him, and I think he did beautifully. Making this record has been really interesting for me as well, because now when it comes time to tour the album, it's a whole new approach for me, because my Indian classical performances, for example, wouldn't fully represent the music on the album. So I've had to create a new band for the tour, and so it's something completely new that I haven't done before. And we've got some wonderful artists from India and from Spain coming together for the first time. And it's a really exciting process, because it doesn't finish with an album. You have to look at the music again and now explore it and try and experiment to make it appropriate for a show. And that's something I love to do, because I think performing is probably my favorite part of being a musician. And so I'm really looking forward to being out on the road and sharing this music in person with people. Inside Me is the first song on the album, and it's easier to make the song than to talk about the song, because often it's so personal. But for me, this was a very meaningful song, because it was a real celebration of being pregnant. And the lyrics are about a life force or some kind of life dancing inside me. And that word dancing comes up again and again through the album because it really is an expression of joy and of celebration. And that was literally how I felt with that melody. The melody started with Javier, in this case. This song, he came to me with a Spanish tanguillos in this melody. And when I heard the melody, it just had a celebratory feeling to it. And so immediately I knew I wanted it to be about the baby inside me. I felt really glad to get to make a song like Krishna on this album because I thought it was really important for there to be at least one full song arrangement that was completely Indian and representing the tradition that I come from. And so when I came up with that melody, I wasn't sure which language to have the song in or what it should be about. And so I called up my father and I asked him for help. And I sent him the melody. And my father wrote the lyrics about Krishna in Bengali, which is the language from the part of India he comes from. And that was really meaningful for me because obviously my father is the most important musical person in my life. He's my guru, my teacher, but also we've performed together since I was 13. So we're collaborators, friends, father and daughter, everything. And so to have him be a part of this record in that way was wonderful for me. I think Boy Meets Girl is a song that I might be most proud of on this record because it really symbolizes what this type of cross-cultural collaboration can be about. Obviously something like that can be done so many ways, but I think we hit something really special on this song because by coincidence or chance or luck, we found when we were playing together, when I was playing with Pepe Habichuela and Javier, and we were all exploring, that in a particular key, we could sit in the two different traditions completely purely at the same time. And so on one side, that song is in a granaína, which is a very old form of flamenco. And on the other side, what I'm playing is purely an Indian raga called Maj Kamaj. And so even though I'm playing and ending on the notes in the chord progression that fits the flamenco form, I'm actually playing a raga. And so I just felt really happy about that because both those styles are being represented and respected in the way that they deserve. And I think it turned into a very, very sweet, very moving piece of music, I hope. There are a few songs with lyrics on the album, and so some of them are by me and then translated into Spanish. But a couple of the songs, two of them, one is Ishq and one is Si no puedo verla, are lyrics that I actually found. I was looking for old lyrics by some of the Sufi poets, poems from India, and I was really glad to find these beautiful couplets. One in Si no puedo verla by a man called Amir Khusru, who is a very important figure in Indian history. He was a 13th century statesman, scholar, musician, poet, and by some people he's also credited with giving the sitar its name because he did a lot of development to that old version of the sitar. And so to get to make that connection on this album and to have lyrics that were so old and from India and then have them be in flamenco forms of music, that was something I was really excited to get to do. Casi Una was a really lovely experience. It was one of those moments I feel really fortunate to have as a musician because I'd never met Buika before the day we recorded the song, and I had only known Javier some days of recording, even though I'd met him before. And he said she was coming over the next day and that we should think of something to do. And I went home that night and I'd heard her voice and was completely inspired by it. And I wrote some lyrics in English. And I came to Javier's studio the next day. He liked the lyrics, he translated it into Spanish and immediately had a melody idea. So we spent literally 10 minutes working on it. And then Buika came in and of course when she sang it, it sounded amazing. So we worked for half an hour and then we recorded the song. And it felt really just natural and organic and inspired. And I think sometimes moments like that can get lost today when you work with all these different people, different styles. It can become very technical and you record separately and never see the person. And so to have a real moment like that of just recording together again and letting it be free and improvised was very trusting and very musical. There's a song called Dancing in Madness that I was really excited to do. I'd written it as a solo sitar piece of music and had an Indian dancer in mind with a lot of the rhythmic things that I wrote. Her name is Maithili Prakash, and she's a beautiful Bharatanatyam dancer I've been friends with for years. And I showed this piece to Javier, and he said, "Oh, we should get Farruko on it." And I said, "What do you mean we should get him on it?" And he said, "Well, he should record." And I said, "But isn't he a dancer?" And he said, "No, we should record his feet." And I'd forgotten that in flamenco, that's something people do, is they record the dancer's feet. And so we recorded him, and he blew my mind. I mean, just the rhythmic virtuosity, it was incredible. And so to parallel that, we also recorded Maithili's feet. And I'm not sure if that's something that's been done before, but of course the Indian dancing is also very rhythmic, and she wears bells when she dances. So we got the sound of both their feet, and it's almost like a duet that I can picture in my head when you hear them.